There's something so magical about old games, you know? Especially old computer games. Before gaming became this lucrative mega industry, we had a bunch of nerds making games for other nerds, and while not perfect, it certainly has an overabundance of charm, wouldn't you say? So, you may have heard of Heroes of Might and Magic, right? Maybe just me, I am starting to get old after all. But while Heroes is perhaps more well-known, it's actually a spin-off of the main series. The Might and Magic series up to this point is pretty revered, but sadly, I've never actually played them for more than just a little bit. Might and Magic 6, The Mandate of Heaven, is one of the earliest computer RPGs I've any recollection of actually playing. Dad had it back in the day on PC, and I remember playing it on an old IBM laptop while on vacation, with only the laptop nipple, as I had forgotten the mouse back at home. I've since become quite the laptop nipple jockey thanks to this game. Well, let's just say that's not a sentence I expected to say when I woke up today, but whatever. Look, I still have the box itself here with the manual. I love this, and I actually want to spend a moment showing this off because, seriously, just look at how cheesy this is. There is clearly a lot of love put into making this as immersive an experience as you can for 1998. The manual reads like a wizard reaching out to you, the player, from across dimensions to guide some adventures to save the world. He tells you about how the king of Enroth, Roland Ironfist, is missing after the king saw a new threat called the Devils, and figured, I can take them.
He could not take them.
This manual is just straight up magical. It's really just made by nerds for nerds, and it's the kind of stuff that makes me miss manuals so much these days. If you've ever played Tunic, you know the kind of impact a good manual can have on you, and this one is phenomenal. They're coming up with so many fantasy terms for your
Trans-dimensional tools of manipulation.
The computer screen is a
Crystal ball.
or the
A scry of silicon.
The keyboard is called the
Ordered runes of Binaria.
The computer itself is called
The abacus of Turing.
The mouse is called
The rodent of Park.
most likely named after Park, the company who made computer mice mainstream and introduced the rolling ball design. They even describe the
A rodent of Park.
as a
Slothful familiar, unwilling to do so much as move without your helping hand.
words cannot describe how much I fucking love this. And I'm not even kidding when I say that I genuinely believe we lost something wonderful when we moved away from manuals. But okay, enough preamble here. Why the fuck are you showing me this, I hear you say? Well, first of all, that's kind of rude. But this is a game I think a lot of people would love if they gave it an honest-to-goodness try. Might and Magic 6 is a pretty big departure from the way the previous games work, but still released to critical acclaim, so let's start with the story setup. You're a bunch of adventurers who just got chased out of their home of Sweetwater by an invading force known as the Devils. You know, the ones the king thought he could take, but he absolutely couldn't. The intro cutscene claims they came from a meteor that crash-landed on Earth, so I guess we've got a bit of an invaders from another world trope going on here. We barely escape with our lives thanks to our mentor Falagar, and we're tasked with restoring the Mandate of Heaven to put an end to these devils. To do that, you first need to enlist the help of the Oracle of Enroth, but you won't get to meet them until you've gained the favor of the various political leaders around the world. The problem is that the way to gain their favor involves their own personal issues and problems that are kind of secondary to the whole devil invasion. In fact, it really doesn't seem like most people care about the devils yet, so I guess we can just kind of file away the main plot for a little while as we go questing around. I'll get into how this works further in a little bit, but I just wanted to set the scene before we can get into the game proper. First off, we need to create our party. And you can pick 4 adventurers of various classes. You got the knight who hits hard and is pretty durable, but will never ever be able to learn magic. The archer is the ranged class who acts a bit as an all-rounder since, you know, they can use some magic. They're very good at disarming traps and the like. You got clerics who use magic based on the mind, the spirit, and the body. Think buffing and healing and removing status effects. They also have access to light and dark magic later in the game. Now, sorcerers, they excel at using elemental magic, plus light and dark magic, but as you might expect, are pretty poor fighters. You've also got the paladin, who's like a mix between a knight and a cleric. They're good fighters, and they can also use the cleric's magic types to heal and buff, but they can't learn the extra high magic types of light and dark, like the cleric and the sorcerer can. The druid is a class who can use both cleric and sorcerer magic, but also cannot learn light or dark magic. You could say that there are 3 specialized classes, Knight, Cleric, and Sorcerer, and 3 hybrid classes, Archer, Druid, and Paladin, who act a little bit like the red mages in Final Fantasy. You know, they're jacks of all trades but masters of none. These 6 classes can also receive some promotions into higher classes later in the game, similar to, you know, how Final Fantasy 1 did it. You receive a promotional quest that's usually a little bit more involved than a lot of the other quests, and when you complete it, your character will get upgraded. For instance, a paladin might need to rescue a damsel in distress to be named a crusader, and then slay a dragon to be further named a hero. There's a fairly hefty increase to your stats upon promotion, so it's always worth doing. In any case, you've finished creating your party, and in my case, we went with the Super Goobers, Carl the Paladin, Eric the Archer, Faith the Cleric, and Zoltan the Sorcerer. I don't know why I said it like that. We start off in a town called New Sorpigal, a tiny town that's kind of perfect for learning the ropes of the game. The town in and of itself isn't too large, so it's kind of hard to get lost, plus it honestly has everything a town should have. You got a temple to heal up, a guild for learning practical skills, you've got several shops, you got a gym to level up in, and finally a magic shop for both clerics and sorcerers.
The magic of fire, air, water, and earth.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Outside the town, you've got a bunch of goblins running around, and you know what? This game can actually be kind of difficult when you're starting off, so we're gonna leave these alone for the time being. First and foremost, we should equip our starting gear. As you can see, the inventory screen is a classic grid-based inventory system, with these goofy guys just standing here in the weirdest position of all time. I don't know why, but I seriously love inventory screens like these. If you could just rotate the pieces, I think that would be the cherry on top, but I still think this is brilliant already. After delivering a letter and getting a smattering of gold, we gear up a bit, and then we can finally get to fighting the enemies. You will miss a lot of your swings in the beginning. Somehow, your weapons whiff all the time on even the most basic of enemies.
Come on.
Though eternity lies before thee.
These enemies also surround you very fast, and when that happens, you are pretty much dead.
Though eternity lies before thee.
Luckily, this game has an extremely cool trick up its sleeve. At any point, you can hit the enter key and... boom! The game is now wholly turn-based. Enemies can't attack at the same time as the moves, so this becomes a necessity to master in order to beat some of the dungeons. You can even use the system to, can I say cheese the game a bit? It feels a bit cheesy to navigate to a point where enemies can't hit you, but you can hit them, but it really feels like you need it because shit hurts so much and enemies gang up on you faster than you can blink. It's very much up to you, the player, to decide whenever to have time flow normally for combat and when to have time stand still for combat. Whenever it's free-flowing, you get the ability to run around and dodge enemies and attacks and their projectiles, but the same goes for the enemies, so hitting with your own ranged weaponry or spells becomes harder as well. Once you get the hang of this system, you can always pick the best option for combat, and that's honestly a fun thing to master. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but the beginning of the game can feel really difficult before you get a bow on every character.
Though eternity.
I recommend that you stick it out until you got those bows before deciding if this game is for you or not. The various elemental spells that you can learn are also straight up amazing.
Air, the magic of light.
I have never played a game where you suddenly gain the ability to walk on water or fly
Air, the magic of light.
in quite this regard. And once you combine the fly spell
Air,
with the meteor shower spell,
fire.
you're damn near impossible to beat, and that is a feeling that is pretty much unrivaled. But now that we've mostly discussed the main gameplay loop of questing, going into dungeons, and finding equipment that make you stronger, let me explain the skill system this game has. I find it to be downright awesome. I'd like to pose the hypothesis that this game's growth system is all about learning from everyone in this world. world, which helps the world come to life. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say you couldn't justify grabbing the leather armor skill when creating your sorcerer, since you wanted to start out with as many schools of magic as possible. If you still want that skill, you'll have to find a guild that can teach that skill first.
You'll have to sign up first.
But you'd probably have to interact with the townspeople to be able to purchase a membership to the guild before you get to learning any skills.
What are you looking at? That will be useful.
Every time that you get enough experience to level up, you need to find a trainer or a gym to be able to actually finalize that rank up. That involves going to the local gym and paying for a small fee for the training. This will give you skill points that you can spend to rank up your various skills. The higher your rank is with the various skills will of course make those skills better, but the real boost comes from then going out into the world and finding specific skill trainers who can make you experts or even masters of those particular skills. For instance, body magic is already great for buffing and healing, but if you become an expert in body magic, suddenly your buffs now last way longer and affect your whole party at once instead of just individual characters. Or your heals will simply heal more hit points. An expert in a particular weapon type might be able to use that weapon defensively as well as offensively, or may even be able to dual wield weapons at certain skill levels. So, I find the skill system to be pretty intuitive and very engaging, but what may not be quite as intuitive is remembering who lives where in the cities. For yes, city design in this game can be a little confusing, and I usually end up checking every single door in every city multiple times in order to remember and find what's where. Some cities aren't that bad. I mean, the first town, New Sorpigal, is pretty well laid out. And so is Castle Ironfist, the second city, with an actually pretty interesting class divide built right into the design. The peasants have the unprotected buildings at the bottom of the hill, whereas the nobility, the expensive stores and all that jazz, are located up inside the castle walls. So yeah, easily understandable layout. When you get to cities like Freehaven though, holy smokes, this is large, and it's really annoying if you just want to find the one guy you heard who teaches the expert merchant skill. So yeah, city design can be a little bit overwhelming, but when it comes to important buildings, you can usually just tell by looking at them. Oh, you want to go to the temple to heal out? They're usually shaped a little oddly, or they might have a very ornate door.
May we be of service? Live long and prosper.
Huh. Do you think these guys like Star Trek or something? I think a big thing about what makes this game so charming to me is, well, just look at it.
Sultan the Sorcerer, can you pull the sword from the stone?
I can relate to that one.
They are great.
Look at these four goobers down here with their smug expressions when they hit something, or their awful expressions when they get diseased or poisoned. These guys are actors who just had to get creative with whatever props they had in order to get the idea across. And it's so charming and quaint that I almost feel a little bit condescending when I look at it and think, oh, that's so cute. But I truly mean it when I say that this shit is my jam. Me when I see a bug.
I'm surprised that you're still laughing with the same intensity.
It's so fucking funny. Just like, oh shit, is that a cockroach? She looks so concerned. I am so elated that this FMV look also carries over to the shops and shopkeepers.
Hurry up, I don't have all day.
And I swear to God, man, the sound bites that follow these characters or the shopkeepers are just pure meme gold. I cannot tell you how many of these shopkeepers with their silly voices have become part of our daily vernacular, like this one.
You break it, you buy it.
In fact, if you have a bit of gold on you, but you don't end up buying anything at their stores,
Finest weapons in the land.
they hurl insults at you as you leave.
See you, cheapskate.
And your party members are just left having to react to what just happened. It's brilliant.
Well, excuse Excuse me.
The sound effects are also something to behold. Fox loves when I cast Wizard Eye, which sounds like this. It's, of course, not what it sounds like for me, because right next to me, I have a living soundboard who'll add her own sound effects on top of this. In fact, she often gets annoyed when I skip the sound effect by going into a menu or something.
Hey!
So yeah, all these things make the world absolutely come to life for me in a way I don't see a lot of RPGs do, even to this day. Anyway, you've now heard the general gist of the game, and if you're interested, I wholeheartedly recommend playing the game. If you're on Windows, GOG has the game, and it works just fine out of the box. If you're on Linux, I found that using Proton versions higher than 6.3 messes with some of the controls, so you should just stick to using version 6.3 instead. The same goes for Might and Magic 7 and 8, the two sequels in the same style. Though, speaking of the controls, there are a couple of things we need to mention. This game is old, and the controls reflect some, aged decisions, if we could put it that way. So, how do you move? WASD? Nah, remember that this game is old, so it's the arrow keys. How do you attack? Well, you use A for attack. How do you cast a spell? S for spell or C for cast. Both of those work. It makes sense, but it doesn't quite feel modern. Don't worry though, it gets worse, and I mean way worse. How do you think you jump? Spacebar? No, of course not. It's X for, I don't know, extremely cool jump, dude. How do you talk to people? Yeah, that one's space. That's okay. How do you think you look up though? Yeah, correct. You use page down. What? That's not what you said? Why do you hit page down to look up, you ask? First of all, how dare you? How do you look down? Page up then? No, you sad soul, it's delete, of course. You can even fly in the game. As I mentioned earlier, wanna guess how to fly up? Yeah, that one is actually page up. It makes sense finally. Now how do you fly down? What do you think, page down? No. Did you already forget that you used page down for looking up earlier? No. To fly down, you hit insert. You idiot. What, you have a compact keyboard that doesn't have all these keys? Alright, I get it. Would you like to remap the controls to something more sensible? Well, too bad, we're not letting you do that. There's no remapping in this game. So, yeah, boy, these controls are... well, they're ass, and not the good kind of ass either. You get used to them if you have a keyboard large enough for it, but if you'd rather just remap the controls as you see fit, I can recommend the Greyface patch that adds remap support. It is pretty useful, but I didn't actually find this patch until I was almost done with the game, so I didn't end up remapping anything in the end. I can confirm that it works though, and it is easy to install on both Windows and Linux, so at least there's that. That means that you can get at least one outdated design decision out of the way if you so please. There are other outdated elements that are harder to get rid of though. The game is built around stereotypes and tropes of many kinds. Some are classics, like, you know, the dwarves who live in mines and uses axes in battle, while others are, oh, well, I don't know if you'd see this in a game made in 2026, let's put it that way. It's kind of hard not to notice. Cannibals and witch doctors, cut purses, the lowly fanatics of the sheeple cult. They're all pretty, colored. All of the early game enemies seem to be some kind of minority, which, well, everyone else of high status are, of course, not. Now, I don't really think that this is meant as commentary from the devs. I think they just wanted to make a game with a wide variety of enemies, and they just drew from the already existing stereotypes of the world as shorthand, but it hasn't exactly aged quite as well as one would hope.
Oh boy! That's uncomfortable.
I personally was fine just rolling my eyes at this and carrying on, but keep in mind that your mileage may vary there. The last outdated thing I wanted to mention about this game is that it absolutely loves to throw a metric shit ton of enemies at you no matter where you are, and that can make certain portions agonizing to play through. Like this Temple of Ba right here. I've painstakingly fought my way through hordes of skeletons in order to get here. I'm really ready to just end this whole dungeon, which honestly isn't even that long, and I would love to just chill out and go back into the overworld. But this game loves traps and ambushes. and suddenly the last room is just filled to the brim with enemies. This takes time. So much time. Oh, and on the topic of traps, there are some real mean ones in this game. You learn early on that fountains are great. Some fresh well water can heal you, and some can even give you both temporary and permanent buffs to your stats. Others will turn you to stone just because. Some might even teleport you to an impossible hellscape.
Though eternity lies before thee.
And some might downright just disintegrate you. That character has now turned to dust, and not even every temple can deal with it either, so womp womp, save often, to put it that way. On the flip side, you can also find a lot of really cool stuff around the world by just clicking on things. Here's one I remember finding in the first city back when I was a kid. On this wall right here is a scroll that allows you to fly for a short while. If you use it and then go to this building and click the top part of this wall or the roof, you get teleported to a shrine in one of the final areas of the game, where you can get a neat +20 to all stats permanently. That is a huge bonus for the early game. There's only one problem. It's in the middle of like a bajillion dragons, so you will die very soon after arriving here. If you decide to roll with bunches, you can actually grab the big buff for all characters and then also frantically navigate to one of the chests nearby to grab some good gear before you're completely cooked. You see, when you die, you lose all the money you had on you, but you actually do get to keep all the gear. So if you want, you can use this to get a leg up on the early game. It's pretty fun. And the game is full of stuff like that. I genuinely adore it. It comes from a time where devs put in jokes and secrets for their own amusement, and I genuinely really appreciate that. Not to say that there aren't any games like that today, but in general, modern design sensibilities are more about making sure the player experiences the entire game instead of keeping things secret. You know, except for a select few who are in the know. I am sure that there's a ton I don't know about this game still, and that's kind of exciting, right? In fact, doing research for this video, I actually found out that the shrine where you get those stat increases actually contains a hidden tile that will take you to the developer offices. I love seeing stuff like this because it makes the whole project just feel a little bit more real, if that makes sense. It becomes clear that it's a passion project for those devs, and it reminds me a little bit of the Insomniac Museum you could visit in the Ratchet & Clank games, albeit not quite as educational as those museums in this instance. But these guys are clearly nerds, and it's a little fun to get a look into what sort of stuff these guys are into. But okay, back to the actual story at hand. From here on out, there'll be stuff I consider to be spoilery, so if you'd like to avoid that, then skip to the time on screen right now, or you can just jump to the summary chapter on YouTube. So, the king is missing, and the queen has left for a funeral on a different continent. The rest of the rulers of Enroth are squabbling amongst themselves for petty reasons, and we need to get to the Oracle of Enroth in order to figure out what to do with the devils. But the 6 council members aren't really interested in letting us in. We first need to gain the favor of the various lords of Enroth in order to have them vote yes on the motion to let us enter. These quests don't have anything to do with the devils, like at all. So I guess we'll just have to keep the devils again on the back burner for now. Rather, the quests task us with things like ending a magical never-ending winter, or even something as underhanded as going to all the stables and engaging in price fixing for the sake of a money-hungry lord. Some lords task us with apprehending a wanted criminal, and some task us with finding a missing person tied to the disappearance of the king himself. All in all, these quests take you around the world, letting you get familiar with the world map as a whole. When you finally get everyone's approval, you're still denied access by Slicker Silvertongue, the representative for the king and queen of the land. The king's regent believes he might have been brainwashed by the Temple of Ba, an evil cult that has sprung up since the arrival of the devils, but are simultaneously providing almost free healing in their temples, so it's definitely winning over the people. I can't help but notice that the healer here is a monk named Landru, which reminds me of the monk Landru from Star Trek. Do you think these guys like Star Trek or something? Anyway, once we investigate the cult further, it turns out that the Temple of Ba and Slicker Silvertongue himself have been in leagues with the devils from the very beginning. Wow, the devils! So the devils are actually in the game sometimes? Huh, that's nice. Well, with Silvertongue ousted, we finally gain access to the Oracle, and the game's first big bombshell hits you. The Oracle is a machine, a computer. This game is a little bit science fiction. Sadly, you're still not done questing around the world, because the Oracle isn't fully functional yet. You'll need to get 4 memory crystals hidden in some of the hardest dungeons in the game in order to get access to the planetary control room, which is a hell of a place to go in this medieval fantasy setting. This game is lucky that the gameplay loop is so much fun, because if not, this would have felt like an agonizing fetch quest at the end of an already long journey. That being said, one of these castles absolutely suck because, well, you got this one enemy type whose presence is enough to dispel all your magic and turn you insane. Good grief, I hate this dungeon. And the only reason it's so annoying is because these enemies will, for some reason, clip through the floors or the ceiling.
He's in the goddamn wall!
And this means that you'll get hit by these magical effects from enemies you've no way of reaching. So the whole thing just turns into such a miserable slog. The 3 other castles are great though. Once you finally install these memory crystals, you get a little bit of a lore dump from the Oracle about a group of people called the Ancients and their ever-long battle against the devils. Turns out the meteor they came in on is not a meteor at all. It's a spaceship. Luckily, the Oracle has a bunch of ancient weaponry that are perfect for battling the devils. All we need to do is grab a final MacGuffin known as a control cube from a place called the Tomb of Varn. Another fetch quest. Ugh, fine. You're lucky this game is still so much fun. That being said, I might have spoken too soon because this dungeon is so absurdly large that getting lost in here was more annoying than what the internet thinks Navi or the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time are. Large, ginormous areas, darkness even with torchlight, and pixel crunch that'll make your eyes water. Couple that with all the small switches here and there that you can easily miss, and you end up with a dungeon that is a bit of a pain. I did like the enemies here, and I especially like that I could attack so many of them through a tiny slit in the door here. That's some fine cheddar. In order to get to this control cube, you need to get to the radioactive reactor core at the center of the tomb. And it's at this point that the sci-fi seeps just a little deeper into the fabric of the game, and you realize that this isn't a tomb, it's a downed spaceship. You then go around and you collect some crystal skulls in order to absorb the radioactivity, and then you have to input the 6 codes of the ship's main officers: the captain, the engineer, the doctor, and so on. And all the codes are the names of Star Trek crew members, only backwards? Huh.
You think these guys like Star Trek or something?
So, you grab the control cube, you get to the Oracle, and you've finally granted access to the planetary control center that's underneath the Oracle. And wow, you've clearly just stepped into a different game altogether. In here, you'll find robots or drones equipped with lasers who will absolutely shred you if you give them the chance. But after a bit of cheese and a lot of save scumming, you finally get the powerful ancient weaponry that can defeat the devils. A gun. You also hold them in the most absurd ways, but they are ridiculously effective, which I suppose makes sense given the technological leap in weaponry. I do wonder if they are a bit bugged though, because if you combine the laser rifles and the blasters with the haste spell and the fly spells, you've effectively turned yourself into 4 X-Wings superglued together. It's really stupidly good. It might actually even be too good, so I understand if you'd rather just keep using your normal weaponry. But anyway, with these new blasters, you're ready to take on the devils. Well, at least somewhat. You need to find a way to prevent the devil ship from exploding so spectacularly that it takes the whole world with it. The solution? Well, of course you unpetrify the king's evil necromantic brother so that he can give you a spell that encapsulates the explosion into a force field. Obviously. This dude is actually the villain of Heroes of Might and Magic 2, and we should probably not just let him escape so readily, but what are you gonna do? So, you've now got everything you need, so you go back to Sweetwater, blast your way through the stronghold, and take out the Devil Queen. And can I just say, the vibes here are immaculate. This doesn't really feel at all like the previous 50 to 70 hours of gameplay in this vibrant fantasy world. It feels like we went from Skyrim to Fallout within the same game, and it honestly works really well. It feels surprisingly cool to get such a tonal shift in both setting and gameplay, but I really like it. Anyway, the ship explodes, but you contain the explosion and save the world. A little bit later, there's a ceremony where you get knighted as your reward. Through a scrying orb, Archibald chuckles evilly and sets up the sequel. Aw man, I knew we shouldn't have let that guy escape. And yeah, that is Might and Magic 6 in a nutshell. Is it stupid? Yes. Is it difficult and somewhat bullshit at times? Also yes. Is it still somehow one of the most mesmerizing RPGs I've ever played despite all of its flaws? Absolutely. I boot this game up from time to time and I play the shit out of it. I'm always a little baffled at the controls the first time I jump in, but I get so used to it so fast that it's honestly no problem for me. I really enjoy the gameplay loop of getting stuff, learning skills, improving said skills, finding a trainer, and so on. It's like this very natural power boost that happens every time you get a tangible upgrade. Like going from expert fire magic to master fire magic is a process of leveling up that happens over time, and the individual points in fire magic are worth it, don't get me wrong, but it's the instant jump from expert to master that really gives all of your spells a jump. And it's just so satisfying. It really tickles my brain in the right way, you know? Combined with the way the game's quests string you along interesting scenarios, by the end of the game, you've done so many things and fought so many various enemies that it's starting to feel like the world of Enroth is your backyard. If there's just one great criticism I'd like to levy towards this game, other than some outdated design elements, is that a lot of the medium with which the story is being delivered kinda sucks. You're given great walls of text as exposition, and, well, these aren't great. For one, if you click anywhere one more time than you would expect, you skip the entire thing with no way of reading it again. Plus, I mean, look at it. I see this and my mind stalls for a second as the pace stops completely. I like reading, don't get me wrong, but I think it could have been presented a little bit better than this. But at the end of the day, Might and Magic 6 is one of the finest computer RPGs I've ever played, even to this day.
Coming right up.
And while it is a little simple, I think that simplicity is also its greatest strength. I seriously highly recommend that you pick up the game if any of this seemed interesting to you. I don't know if I'm gonna make a video about the sequel, Might and Magic 7, but that one is arguably even better as it adds different races, more skills, and even more classes and character creation. But you see, they ended up removing the goofy-ass FMV characters, and that does make the game a smidge less charming to me.
Hurry up, I don't have all day.
That is what I got at this time. Don't worry, I got a pupil of mine to already kick me in the shin for not uploading for a little while, so that's already taken care of. But for now, I gotta say thank you so much for watching this silly little video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, then your view is more than enough for me, but if you'd like to help the channel out, it'd be swell if you shared it with someone you think would like it. But that's it. Have a wonderful day, peeps. I'll see you guys in the next video. Holla bra!